getting rid of everything and going, as minimalist as possible sounds like a lovely solution when you're tripping over a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
But that's not really going to solve the problem because a homeschool family takes a lot of stuff.
Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. I am so glad you have joined me this week and come back with me next week because I have the same guest on both weeks and I'm super excited to have her back. I'm back with Mystie Winckler. She has been on the podcast before and I loved having her on the first time. And so I said, let's come back again. I want to talk about more things. She has a lot of great things to share. And so she is back with us this week and we're going to talk about home organization. We're going to talk about preparing our kids to launch them into adulthood and just all the things that go with those topics. And so I'm excited to have Mystie with me to talk about those things. But before we get into our conversation, of course, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, CTC Math. If you guys are looking for great online math curriculum that you do not have to teach yourself, they will do all the teaching for you. Check out ctcmath.com. They are amazing. Our family has loved them and you can try them out for free. So if you're not sure if it's going to be a good fit for you, you can check them out at ctcmath.com and see if they are a good fit. I think they will be. So try them out, ctcmath.com. Also, I want to remind you guys, you may have heard a few weeks ago, I talked about it. We are going to be at the Teach Them Diligently convention in Branson, Missouri at the Branson Convention Center. That's kind of a tongue twister. May 15th through the 17th. And we are super excited. I am not going to be speaking at this conference. We are just going to attend the conference, but we are going to spend probably most of our time at Ginger Hubbard's booth. So just look for Ginger Hubbard and you will probably find us there. We would absolutely love to meet you guys. And if you would like to join us either at this convention or any other Teach Them Diligently convention, they have one in Dayton, Ohio, Pigeon Forge, and Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. Any of their conferences, you can use the code SR for Schoolhouse Rocked, SR, for $25 off of your registration. And you can find out more about that conference at teachthemdiligently.net. And we really, really hope to see you guys there. We love getting to meet our listeners and just getting to know you and your families. So May 15th through 17th, Branson, Missouri. Well, Mystie, welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you back with me again. It's been a little while. So for those who maybe don't remember you, or maybe they just are not familiar with Mystie Winckler, introduce yourself to our audience.
Well, thank you so much for having me on again. Yeah, I have been blogging for a super long time, like more than a decade. I'm a blogging dinosaur and have a podcast or two podcasts, Simply Convivial and Simplified Organization, and a blog and a community about homemaking, homeschooling, and doing life cheerfully. So it's really like life management.
Yeah.
Including life as a homeschool family.
Right. I love that. And you're a second generation homeschooler.
Yes. Both my husband and I were homeschooled. I was homeschooled all the way through. And then we have 5 kids. Our oldest is 21 and our youngest is 12. So our oldest is married, has a little baby. So I'm a grandma now. I leveled up. And he's a realtor. And then our second son is at New St. Andrews College. He's a junior there. And then we have 3 that we're still homeschooling, a senior, 10th grade, and 7th grade.
Wow. So fun. You have your hands full and busy. Does your grandbaby live near you?
About a mile away.
Oh, that's the best thing. That is my dream in life, is to have all my grandbabies and my daughters live right next door.
It is so fun.
I'll handle, them living close by. So, oh man, that's exciting. Well, I'm excited to have you back. And I'm really excited about this topic because we're going to be talking about organization. And this is something that I love and hate. It's one of those love-hate relationships that I think many of us have. Some of us are a little bit better at organization. Some are not so good at organization. And I think for homeschool moms, oftentimes they want to give up on homeschooling because they feel so unorganized, or they simply are unorganized. They don't know what to do. They just don't have that organization bone in their body. And it comes very naturally for some and others, not so much. And so it can get very overwhelming for homeschool moms who have their kiddos at home and they're always making messes and, we're always trailing behind them. And then we've got all the schoolwork and we've got all the meals that we have to make and the laundry and the dishes and all there's just so much to this homeschooling life. And it is a blessing, but it can also be really, really hard. And it can be very discouraging, I know, for many, many moms. And so you have a newish book out. It's actually been out for a little while. It's called Simplified Organization. And I love the subtitle. It's Learn to Love What Must Be Done. Years and years ago, when Brooklyn was little teeny tiny, I remember going to a Bible study and I was just feeling really kind of discouraged and overwhelmed with housework. And it was really the first time I had been home. I worked from the time I was 14 until literally till like the day she was born. I always had a job outside of the home. And so when she was born, I stayed home and I was like, I'm 31 years old. I have never been a stay-at-home anything, and I don't know what to do with myself right now. And so I got into this very kind of complaining attitude where I just was kind of irritated all the time because I felt like there were all these responsibilities. And I went to this Bible study, and I remember one of the ladies at our table, she said, I've really had to change my perspective on housework and chores and the things that I have, that are part of my responsibility. And she said, I look at them as blessings and look at them as, when you're having to wash dishes, praise God that you've got dishes to wash. When you're having to do laundry, praise God that you have laundry to wash and clothes to wear, because some people don't. Praise God that you have food to prepare and put on your table, because many people don't. And it really changed my perspective on being a keeper of my home, because I realized this is not a curse. This is not a drag. And sometimes it's hard, but it's not something that we should fret about. It's something that we should actually find joy in. So I know that was a long intro, but I would love for you to kind of start out by telling us, like, why did you write this book, and how have you found joy in being a keeper of your home?
It's so common for all of us, I think, at some point at least, to feel like it's just too much, or it's meaningless and tedious and pointless. And it's so easy to start spiraling in those negative thoughts about our home. But anything that's worthwhile is hard work.
Yeah.
But our culture for the last several generations has pretty much said value and meaning only comes if money comes with it. If there's a paycheck or if there's a grade or some kind of external pat on the back, mostly tied to paychecks and income. And so to come home and not have that, and to not have any kind of external grade or gold star or pat on the back is really disorienting. And even for me, I got married young. I was 19 when I got married, and I taught a couple homeschool co-op classes, but I was mostly at home even as soon as our first year I was at school. So our first year we were married, we were both still in college, but then we graduated and I taught a class. So I was like out of the home a couple hours a week.
Yeah.
But our first apartment there, after we were done with school, it was just me and a meal to cook and, housework to do. And I was also homeschooled, the oldest of 7 kids, and a very typical oldest daughter in a large family, where I had help. Like, I knew how to do all the things, and I had helped prepare meals before. And so I came into marriage and motherhood with all the pride of your early 20s and thought, okay, well, I know all the things that my mom didn't do very well. And so I'm just going to lay everything out, get everything under control, create my systems, and do everything the best right out of the gates.
Way better than your mom did.
Yes. And so, of course, because God is good, I fell flat on my face instead.
Oh, boy.
Pride goes before a fall.
That's right.
And so it took me many years really to diagnose that I had, even in my pride of wanting to get those systems in place so that I could totally nail it, there was underneath that an actual disrespect of the work. And a thinking that it was beneath me. that, it's just menial, tedious housework. I need to do it as little as possible so that I can do more meaningful things.
Yeah.
And God worked on me with this for a long time. And a lot of the stories are in my book. But, I just came to realize that all the work in tending a house is life-giving work.
Mm.
And it all matters because life matters, and it's all fostering life. If there was no life in the home, then none of that work would exist. But that isn't better. So the work is good work because we're tending and keeping and promoting and growing life in all these different ways.
Yeah.
And so we can actually enjoy doing the work instead of like dismissing it and diminishing it. Even the scrubbing the toilets, we can, there's something there that we can actually enjoy, especially when we know the meaning behind it.
Yeah. Talk about falling flat on your face. What did that look like for you?
So after I figured out that I wasn't just going to be able to nail all the systems and have everything organized right out of the gates perfectly and efficiently and executed flawlessly, I started spiraling to like, well, if the goal of the efficient system is to spend as little time as possible doing housework, the other way to spend as little time as possible not doing housework is just not doing it and not caring. Some people like a clean house, but I don't care. And some people, are just naturally clean. I'm not. So I'm not going to try to be something that I'm not.
Right. You're just going to own it.
Yeah. We're just going to see how far things can go. And I would do this boom and bust cycle of, we would still have someone over or, I'd have some kind of occasion to clean. And I would do a total day cleaning frenzy. And then just let everything go for weeks and weeks. And it was just not pretty and it wasn't responsible. And it really, both of those were the same principle underneath, which was housework's not worth my time.
Mm. Talk about it being life-giving, because you mentioned that, you realized after falling flat on your face, you came to that conclusion that being a keeper of the home is life-giving. And I agree. I'm certainly not perfect at it, but I do like my house to be tidy. It's much easier for me right now because, now we only have one 14-year-old at home and she's fully capable of doing all the things herself. She can clean her own room. She could do her own laundry. She can do the dishes. She can do all the things. And so it does make it easier than when my girls were little. But I enjoy having a nice home, but it was much harder when my kids were younger. So what do you mean when you say that you came to that conclusion that it could be and is life-giving?
Yeah, I think it is because the work itself is there because there's life. So because there are people who need to live, they need to eat. So making meals is a part of homemaking. And then because they ate, they're living and there are dishes and there's a kitchen to clean. So, it's totally true that we can enjoy and be grateful for the luxuries and resources that we've been given. And that's a piece of enjoying the work, is being grateful that we have these things. But also, on top of that, the work that we do is literally giving life to the people in our house by, the food, the clothes, are clothing them, they are sleeping in beds because they're walking around, because they're alive. The floors, they're walking and eating. The floors are full of crumbs. All the work is there because life is happening.
Yeah.
And so the life-giving home is more about what's happening in the home and facilitating that and enjoying your role in facilitating the development and fostering of life, rather than an aesthetic achievement that you've made where, everyone feels cozy because of the decor that I've chosen and everything is neat and tidy. So the atmosphere is peaceful. That can be nice, but the atmosphere is actually peaceful because of who you are as the mother. Like our attitudes and our approach to our house and our families is the atmosphere of our home.
Yeah.
And so if the decor and style doesn't match our attitude, like one way or the other, the atmosphere is not good.
Right. Yeah.
And one thing I like to say is that the house is a stage because, if you look up organization books, they are full of pictures. You look up organization tips on the internet or on social media and it's pictures.
Yes.
Everything's about how it looks.
Yeah.
And we can't make our homes that are having life lived by that many people all day long, all the time. It's not going to look like a magazine, but it's not supposed to because it's actually a stage where life is happening, drama is happening, and we're resetting the stage to facilitate the action.
Yeah.
But it's always the action that's the point. The drama, the play.
Yeah.
The play is the point. The stage is never the point.
Yeah.
The stage can get in the way or the stage can help.
Mm-hmm.
But a well done play on a very bare stage is better than a bad play on a very elaborate, clean stage.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. I've been in people's homes before that are very, very tidy and everything is in its perfect, proper place. And you feel like you can't move. Like you feel like, and especially if I've taken my kids there, I feel like, oh, well, don't sit there or don't touch that thing. Or, it's almost like you feel like you're in a museum and you can't just let down and just be normal and human. And that's not welcoming. And, the Bible talks a lot about hospitality. And you can't be hospitable when you're so afraid that everything is going to get messed up. But then I think we can err on the side of, like you had talked about in the beginning, where you fall flat on your face, well, I just don't care. It doesn't bother me to live in a messy house. And so I'm just not going to bother with it at all. And then you bring people into your home and they're uncomfortable on the other side of it. They're uncomfortable because there's a mess everywhere and there's, dirty laundry all over the place and there's dirty dishes and, not that there can't be some of that, but I think we need to find a good balance on both ends of that. And so we're going to talk more about that, but first we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Join Apologia for the Homeschool Bootcamp, a free video series that provides practical guidance and wisdom from experienced homeschool parents. You'll discover how to equip your family for academic, social, and spiritual success. Plus, you'll discover how to build deeper and stronger family relationships. Homeschool Bootcamp covers how to break free from the public school mindset, daily planning, supporting students with learning challenges, homeschooling as a working parent, navigating the high school years, and much more. Find this incredible free homeschool resource at apologia.com/bootcamp. We are back with Mystie. Before the break, we were talking about finding that balance of not being too much of a perfectionist, but also not being so messy that, you can't live in either world. I mean, you can, but it's not really comfortable. And for the homeschool mom, it's really impossible for a homeschool mom to live in the world of perfection, right? But for the mom, for those type A'ers, they want perfection all the time. And that can cause a lot of angst in their life because they want their home to be perfect all the time. And it won't be. It can't be when you've got children in the home with you. And so how do we balance those two things? And I know that part of the way we can do that and that we need to do that is that we first have to understand what our situation is. And so kind of walk us through this. And I know you walk through this in the book as well, but walk us through what it looks like to really understand what our situation is.
It's so overwhelming to be the stay-at-home mom, also homeschooling, because there is so much to do and there's so much coming at you all the time, and you are the decision maker all day long.
Yeah.
And so it's understandable that and natural for there to be a lot of details and options and expectations that are making you overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the world feeds us a lot of potential solutions that don't work, especially for a homeschool mom. So, just solving, like getting rid of everything and going, as minimalist as possible sounds like a lovely solution when you're tripping over a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
But that's not really going to solve the problem, because a homeschool family takes a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It just does.
Yep.
And so we have to manage life and manage the stuff and just kind of hold so many things in tension together and figure out what our particular family needs. I said before, the home is a stage. And so the action matters more than the props. But if the props are in a jumble on the floor of the stage, it actually gets in the way of the action also.
Yeah.
The action is impeded. And so if you can clear the stage and have homes for things and, kind of work that stage, it becomes a place where the action can happen without a bunch of tripping and hazards. And so that's what we want to do. And we want to do it with a cheerful, happy demeanor as the atmosphere of our home. And we all know the perfectionism of the type A who's trying to do it all perfectly. But a part of what I was describing in the giving up, my giving up stage, is really the type B version of perfectionism, where I'm not going to try being perfect. I already know I can't be, so I'm just not going to even get started, or I'm not even going to try. My plan's not going to work, so I'm not going to make a plan.
Yeah.
So there's perfectionism on both sides, and the perfectionism gets in our way so much. And the world's message is about what your home is for and what organization is feeds perfectionism and then feeds discontent.
Yeah.
And so when you know that our homes are the stage for action and it's our job to just make the home and make it foster life, then we have a mission that we can enjoy working with. It's not just a checklist of chores to do.
Yeah.
We're doing something real. And organization isn't about having labeled containers and having your closet be picture perfect and all these things that are easy to photograph and measure.
Yeah.
Organization is about being prepared for your life. So it's really about being able to mentally and emotionally handle your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of organization really does start with and boil down to our attitudes and approach to just life.
Yeah.
Rather than where does the stuff go and how does it go there?
Yeah.
So that's a lot of what I cover in the book is how do we organize our attitude and put our attitude in the right place so that then everything else we can kind of work it out if that's working.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, for the mom she's not handling well emotionally or mentally where she's at. Where does she start? Because I think that's one of the hardest things is just knowing even like where, you look around a house that's just a disaster, and sometimes it's easy to close doors and not look at the disaster. You might have a few rooms that are nice and tidy, but then you've got other rooms that, you can't even walk through them. And she just is so overwhelmed when she looks at it. So she just closes the door and pretends like it doesn't even exist. I have done that myself many times. Where does one even start when it comes to just that? Like, I can't even handle this,
Yeah. So for organizing the attitude portion of that, which is just how we emotionally respond when we see that mess. Two things I recommend doing. One is to brain dump. And so that is just writing things down. Like, what are your thoughts about that room where you just closed the door, about how meals are going, like whatever it is that's bothering you, just start writing things down.
Yeah.
Because we get in little thought loops and we just feel stuck, but it's because we can't get out of that thought loop. And writing it down actually, it actually helps you stop the loop and really see. And usually what you see is unreasonable expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you are expecting, or if you believe that it's actually your job to make the whole house picture perfect all the time, then you're under a burden that you're never going to be able to get out of. And so you're closing door, that's your coping mechanism.
Right.
Instead of saying, okay, my job is facilitating life. And you know what? Are the kids alive? Do we get along? Are we being educated? Then if there's a room that I have to close the door on, well, we'll gradually be working on that, but that's not the biggest deal in the world.
Right.
If you start to be able to think through things and really pray through things, and even be able to talk to your husband about them more clearly rather than just coming from that emotional overwrought state.
Yeah.
And then an alignment card. This is where you put scripture or a quote or something that is true that you need to remember that answers your negative, accusing thoughts, so that you can replace those thoughts with God's words, with truthful perspective. And then, when there are those areas that you need to chip away at, just actually chip away at it 5 minutes at a time. Like I'm 5-minute timer. That's it. And you begin to make progress. And by ending the procrastination and the perfectionism with really teeny small steps.
Yeah.
And you start realizing how much perfectionism is actually getting in your way. If you say 5 minutes isn't going to matter. It's like, well, try it.
Right. One of my favorite resources that you have, you actually sent this to me, and it's a bust out of burnout bingo.
Yes.
And it's so much fun. And we'll link to this in the show notes. It's a free printout, but it's so much fun. For those watching on video, you can actually see the bingo card here. But what you've done with this bingo card, it's just an 8.5 by 11 sheet that you print on your printer, but you've pieced it out exactly as you're saying, so that it's not one huge chore all at one time. How many of us can say, I'm just going to clean my whole house today? Right. And the entire house, from top to bottom, every room from end to end is perfectly clean and tidy. That doesn't happen. And so you have little things, and one of the ones that I thought was the funniest thing was you put remove trash from your purse. I'm like, I'm not the only one. Yeah, I'm not the only one who has trash in her purse. You shove that receipt down and it ends up at the bottom of your purse under your wallet, and you never find it again. Then you can't find that receipt when you have to return something or you need it for some reason. But you have just little things on here. You have clean one bathroom counter and toilet, and you can check that off of your bingo card. And then you've got wipe down the outside of your front door. Some of these are things that you don't even think to do. One of them is make a dinner plan for the week. Another is wash all the dishes in and around the sink. So they're little things, sweep or vacuum the living room. So it doesn't mean you have to sweep or vacuum the entire house, but just one room today, just one room. Make that one thing your goal for the day. And then eventually, and she offers prizes. I don't know what these amazing prizes are that she speaks of. Maybe a new car or something. I don't know.
I like to send people stickers.
Oh, is that what it is? I love stickers too. And like I said, we'll link this to the show notes, but I love that you're just giving very practical ways for us as moms, and writing it down is kind of what you've done with the bingo card. But taking a notebook, and I've done this myself too. I love checklists because I think they're fun to check off. You get that satisfaction of crossing it out. But I've done this before when I've had a big job to do, where I will just take a notebook. If I've got my schoolroom is the area in our house that gets the messiest by far, because I can close the door on it. I, can throw everything in there, and then it gets to the point where I'm like, I can't even walk in here. And so I've done that where I've taken a notepad and I'm like, okay, I need to just go through books and eliminate however many books I can eliminate. Another day this week, doesn't have to be tomorrow. Another day this week, I'm going to go through our games, or I'm going to, do whatever. And eventually you get to the end, like I can vacuum the floors because now I can see them again. And just doing them little bits at a time really does make a big, huge job so much smaller. And so that's what you were talking about when you're saying, just do it little by little. It doesn't have to be everything all at once, but it's amazing. It's kind of like with reading, when we think, well, we don't have time to read. Well, if you read 10 minutes a day, in 60 days, you've read a whole hour. That adds up very quickly. If you clean 10 minutes a day, in 6 days, you've cleaned a whole hour. You can clean a lot in an hour. hopefully you're cleaning more than 10 minutes a day because your house probably requires it with kiddos around and stuff. But it really does make it easier when we make the list. We write it down, we make those goals, and then we bring our kids into doing those things with us.
Mm-hmm.
And so talk about that for a minute, because I know that as we're raising our kids, even little kids can do a lot. I mean, it's pretty amazing even what a 2-year-old can accomplish. So how do we bring our kids into this mix and teach them to be joyful keepers of the home as well?
Yeah, one thing that helps when you've broken a big project down is that usually means that you've made it more specific. And that's key to bringing the kids on board.
Yeah.
Is they have to actually even know what you're talking about.
Right.
I remember at one point, I had, we had all the toy bins, and we had a playroom, and there was the Duplo bin and the railroad bin, and all of the categorization of all the toys made complete sense to me.
Right.
And I would send the kids, unsupervised to go put things away.
Clean.
Go clean. And if there were no toys on the floor, they said they'd done it.
Right.
That was their definition. And then, weeks later, I'd come down and look at a bin, and every bin was just a jumbled mess.
Right. Like,
and at one point, I made some comment to my husband, like, this bin is for railroads. And like, I even at one point put a picture on it, like, this one's for railroads and this one's for Duplos. I thought I'm making this obvious.
Right.
And my husband's like, no, it makes sense to you. It doesn't make sense to other people.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh. So actually, I just need to, like, unless I want to be the ones putting all the toys in the place that makes me happy.
Right.
Maybe we should just, their definition is their level right now if they've put the toys in a bin.
Right.
That's actually good enough. Yeah. And so like letting go of, that organization.
Right.
It's better for them to help than it is to have everything categorized.
Yes.
Neatly.
Yeah.
And so like bringing things down to where they can do it. Things like emptying the dishwasher and also just being around then when we give them chores.
Yes.
So that we can give that guidance. We call it EHAP. Everything has a place.
Oh, okay.
And so that means since everything has a place, it's time for everything to go back in its place.
Yeah. Yep.
And so we set a timer. And so that everyone knows it's not this never ending thing that mom's going to keep having you do more and more for the rest of the day. That's how they feel when you say, let's clean.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, 10 minutes. All we're doing is putting things back where they belong.
Right.
And then you can say, is that where that belongs?
Right.
Is that where that, and then you also find out often that they don't know where things belong. And then you can fix that. But being there to supervise and help and guide and teach instead of expecting like that you can give them a list and have them basically be maid service unsupervised where you get time back. That happens like when they're 15.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
You really got to put in your time before it's really paying off.
Yeah.
Or freeing up your time and mental energy. And right as soon as it does, they go get a job.
Right.
And then,
and then they're not home to
they're
help.
helpful to someone else, but not you.
Yeah, that's right. It's so funny. It's so important to teach our kids. We talk about training them up in righteousness. And this is one of those things that we're training our kids to do things well. We cannot expect our children to know how to, if we say go clean the bathroom, we can't expect them to know how to clean the bathroom if we have not stood alongside of them. Literally, with my girls, I was like, okay, here's the cleaning stuff. I'm going to clean the bathroom and you're going to watch. And that might take a couple of times. And then, the next time say, okay, now you do it and let them do it. And you watch while they clean the bathroom and make sure that, and then you can go back and, let them do it on their own. And you go back and say, okay, well, you completely missed this sink or whatever, you didn't lift the lid on the toilet, whatever it is, but in a gentle way, just showing that correction of, well, here's the correct way to do it. With doing dishes, that's a big thing. How do you load a dishwasher? That doesn't come naturally to everybody. To some it might, but not to everybody. And kids typically want to just get stuff done, especially if there's a timer. They're like, well, I'll just get it done before the timer goes off, but they may not do it well. It's so important for us to train our kids to do things with patience. It's hard to be patient with them sometimes because we expect them, like you said, we expect them to have the maturity that we have, to have the work ethic that we have, and to be able to do things the way that we do them. And children do not typically work that way. Some do, but most don't.
Yeah. Or we even want them to have the work ethic that we wish we had.
Right.
We have in our imagination.
That's right.
It's like, oh, wait, I shortcut my work also.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
I do that also. And even once they can load the dishwasher or clean the bathroom after that training process, doesn't mean, therefore, from that point forward, they will evermore do it the correct way.
Yes.
One motto I learned from an older homeschool mom was, don't expect what you don't inspect.
Oh, that's a good one. Yes, that's excellent.
Yeah. It's like, if I don't care enough to check in on them, why should I expect them to care enough to do it right?
Homeschooling is a big responsibility. With BJU Press, you can feel equipped to give your children not just an education, but a foundation for life. Children learn in different ways, and BJU Press lets you adapt to their unique learning styles. And you'll love the community of other homeschool moms who use BJU Press. They've been where you are, and they're full of advice, encouragement, and practical tips. And when you need even more help, there's the Homeschool Hub, which keeps families organized with easy lesson planning, calendars, and even grading tools. To learn more, visit bjupresshomeschool.com.
You have launched a couple of children into adulthood, and we have now launched, I shared a few weeks ago with our audience that our oldest daughter has moved in with a friend. She's only 10 minutes down the road from us. And oh my goodness, that I'm not a crier. I am not someone who's very emotional, but that day I cried, and I felt like I was missing a limb, like someone was literally tearing a limb off of me. There's something about being with our kids through their entire homeschooling childhood. We're with them all the time. And then all of a sudden she wasn't. And we still see her several times a week. I talk to her several times a day. And it's exciting to see the things that God is doing in her life, but it's so different. I mean, nothing can prepare Mama's heart for her first child. And I'm assuming probably my next will be just as painful of them leaving. And as painful as it is, it's also exciting. And, my husband and I are able to look back and say, we did the best we could. We did what God called us to do. And we were diligent. We did our best to be diligent. We did our best to be obedient, to raise her up, to love and know Jesus. And by God's grace, she is following him. But it's still hard. And I look back too, and I'm like, oh, I wish I had done this. And I wish I had done that. And I wish I had done this. And I don't want to say I have regrets. There are things that I would have done differently. And so, Mystie, as you look at your two adults who are now out of the home, you've got one married, you've got one in college, talk about what that transition was like for you. And then I want to talk about, like, as those moms who are listening, who have little kids, I'm telling you guys, it's going to be here very, very quickly, how we can actually prepare our children to launch into adulthood in a way that is honoring to the Lord.
Yeah. It is a big project.
Project is a good word.
And I think it's so tempting, especially as a homeschooling family, to think of having your family in the home as your project, where you get really focused on our relationships, which are super important, and we need to be focused on them. But to start thinking of the end goal as being our relationships.
Yeah.
But the relationships do change, and they're supposed to change. And so we do want to be building and nurturing them, but with the goal of those children being adults, not in our home, instead of thinking of our goal for our home and our family being about all of our family being home and around the dinner table and all that. I think family dinners are super important, but the dinners are important because of, the conversations and how much teaching and relationship connections are happening there.
Yeah.
As a tool that's helping them become adults. And so nothing's being ruined when they suddenly aren't coming home for dinner every day. And I think that's it. That time comes, I think, for a lot of moms sooner than they were expecting.
Yeah.
And we don't even realize that we were thinking of our little family as our project to keep together.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when one starts leaving, because it's a gradual process.
Sure.
It's not usually, suddenly they're gone.
Right.
It's like they get a driver's license.
Right.
And they take
I was going to say,
classes.
it's when they get that license and they can go out on their own.
They get a job.
Yep.
And now you're not the only one in charge of their schedule.
Yeah, that's right.
These little baby steps. And that the family that we are creating in our home is a multiplying force, not a stable unit, not a static unit that's supposed to be one thing. Mm-hmm. It's a training ground, and they're supposed to graduate out.
Yeah.
And the relationship does change. And I know it's especially hard, I think, when the oldest are like 12 or 13, it's easy to start feeling as a mom like, okay, so we really don't have that much time left. So right now they should be like, this is what they are. And that's nerve-wracking because they are not ready to handle life at all at that age, but they often think they are. And so much maturity and rocky roads can happen between that like 12 to 18 time frame. And I think we need to be prepared for that so that we don't try keeping them close in a way that's inappropriate for that stage of life. Mm-hmm. Like keeping them close for training is appropriate when they're younger.
Yeah.
And then they have to start testing the waters independently, and they have to actually fail at things and do things without you. And I think, I'm sure that it's different. I haven't yet launched a girl. I've launched 2 boys.
Yeah.
And, they don't want mom to tell them what to do anymore.
Yeah.
And that's actually a good thing. Like that they need to go through that phase to become men.
Right.
And we need to remember that is what we want. We don't actually want them to stay children. So we need to not treat them as children. We need to start treating them as adults as soon as we can. I think after they hit the teen years.
Yeah.
As practice for us and for them, because we know that our goal is actually that they become responsible adults out on their own, starting their own family units that are distinct from ours. Mm-hmm. And we can be excited to see what they do. We've given them something, and then it's not on us anymore what they do with it.
Yeah.
And also what they do with it right away isn't necessarily the way it's going to play out. I think, I was the oldest and got married young. And one of the things both my husband and I said when we were new parents at 21, we said, well, here are all the problems with homeschooling. Do. And some of those we weren't wrong. Like there can be issues.
Sure.
And there can be problems, but we were very critical and proud and overconfident.
Yeah.
And so we got on the board to start a school, and that didn't happen. And so at first, homeschooling was our plan B. Like, okay, well, we can if we have to.
Right.
And then we got going, and a few years in, it was like, oh, this is such a blessing. And we were so ungrateful.
Yeah.
And then, so one of the things that I like to tell my kids is, you'll thank me when you're 30.
Right. Because their perspective is so different at that point.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so like, just hang in there for the long haul, mom. And when your 12-year-old or 13-year-old is telling you all the things that you're doing wrong,
Right.
it's like, well, that's maybe going to be the lessons. What you're noticing are the lessons you're going to be learning as an adult. And we'll see.
Right. It is so funny to look back. You know, we also got married young. We got married at 20. We had just turned 20, engaged at 19. And I look at my 20-year-old self and I'm like, man, I didn't know anything. I mean, I knew some stuff, you know, but I mean, 30 years later, I'm a completely different person than I was when I got married. And that's how it's supposed to be. You know, you look at the progression of our kids, your 15-year-old is completely different than they were when they were 5. And your 25-year-old is completely different than they were when they were 15. I mean, that is the progression of life. We're growing. And part of that is growing in our walk with the Lord. We're growing in our maturity. We're growing as just human beings. You know, you realize who people are and how people respond to life and how people react to things and what it looks like to be a responsible human being. You know, I look back, I'm like, man, I did some really dumb things and really immature things, but I also did some things that were right and made some decisions. You know, I mean, I think about, of course, my 2 biggest decisions. Of course, I tell this to my girls all the time. The 2 biggest decisions you'll ever make are your decision to follow Christ and the man that you choose to marry.
Mm-hmm.
By God's grace, he gave me an amazing husband. We've been able to, you know, do ministry together for many years and stuff. But, you know, it hasn't always been easy. And as we've grown as people and as a couple and as our family has grown, you know, we can look back and go, okay, well, we made some mistakes, and we have to remind ourselves too, you know, Brooklyn, you know, she's not making a disaster of her life by any means, but there are some decisions that she's made that we're like, I wouldn't have done it that way, you know? And I have to remember, she's not mine. She belongs to the Lord. She doesn't belong to me. And just because her decision is different doesn't make it wrong. It just makes it different. But it's hard to, you know, close your mouth sometimes and throw away that key and go, oh.
It's like, I will not see the fast food wrappers in your car.
You're eating at Taco Bell again for the 5th time this week.
Your paycheck.
Right, exactly.
And that is, I think, especially hard for the homeschool mom who's been so involved for so long.
Yes, right.
To start letting that go and realize.
So hard.
You know, if you think of, you know, yourself back at that age, now you know that you didn't know that much.
Right.
But also at the time, you were pretty sure you did.
Right. You didn't know that you didn't know.
And it's like, now the tables are flipped.
Yeah.
And instead of trying to convince your kids that they don't know as much as they think they do, because now you know them.
Right.
Realize, oh, who in your life at that time was telling you that you didn't listen to?
Right. Yeah.
And now you need to take that place.
Yes.
Like, what should that person?
Yeah.
How could you have received something from that person? And like, okay, they were right and I was wrong.
Yeah.
And this is about me repenting and maturing myself in a new stage of life.
Right.
Where now I say all those annoying things that the older ladies at the grocery store said.
Yeah. But you know, it's so interesting because even at the stage of life that I'm at right now, my mom, who's 77 years old, she'll talk with me and in a very loving and kind way. She'll say, you know, I remember when you first got out, you know, when you first moved out on your own. And, you know, I struggled with this, and this, and she's helping to guide me through this new phase of life. Mm-hmm. But now I know, okay, I can listen to my mom and I know that what she's saying is wise, you know, and I don't have to agree with everything that she's saying and all the advice that she gives. But a lot of it, I'm like, oh, Mom, that's such good advice. I'm so glad you told me that because you've been through it before. And so I know for certain that I'm going to look back in 30 years at my, you know, 50-year-old self and go, oh, yeah, I didn't know all the things I thought I knew at 50. Mm-hmm. I know so much more now at the age of, you know, 77 or 80 years old because I've had more life experience. This is such a fun conversation. You know, it's close to my heart, of course, with, you know, having launched a brand new adult into life. And it's scary and it's exciting and it's all the things. How can I want to kind of go back to what we talked about, being organized and having not just our home, but our lives in order. How can we prepare our kids? Like what steps, and I know there are a million steps we can take, but maybe you can kind of narrow it down to some specific steps that we can take with our kids to prepare them for adulthood.
Yeah, especially when we are tempted by overwhelm and perfectionism, we can actually use our growth process and that struggle to help our kids. Because perfectionism is the temptation to say that I should know before starting exactly how everything is going to go and be able to do it exactly right. So either you're going to burn out trying to do it that way, or you're going to give up entirely. And especially when you start having preteens and teens, if our kids can see us maturing in that and recognizing it and talking to them about what we are learning, that can help them start to avoid those thought patterns and expectations as well. And sometimes it is our perfectionism that we put on our parenting that makes us afraid for them, that makes us want to have parented or have educated them fully and completely before letting go.
Yeah.
And for ourselves in our own work, and then for our kids as they grow and mature as well, failure is a part of the process and mistakes are a part of the process. And what we all need more practice in is not panicking when we fail and we make mistakes and we sin, like we know what to do. We repent, we receive forgiveness and grace, and we get back up and try again. And our kids can see us doing that, and they are learning that from our modeling more than they will learn it from our words.
Yeah.
And especially as they become teens and we move from a more parental role to a coach or, older friend role. If we are learning and growing, that's going to make us actually more relevant, more available than if they think we're going to be totally stressed out if something goes wrong in their life. They're not going to want to share or talk to us.
Yeah.
But if we share that we realize we're messing up, or we're going to try something new, or, if you're living your own personal life of growth and you're learning things and you're just doing that, not publicly, but publicly to your children where they know and they can see it, that's way better than lectures, because you're modeling that life of learning. And that keeps you more limber in dealing with their growth as well. Like you're just able to have that more peer-to-peer relationship a little bit more.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Talk about the difference between your parenting now. So your oldest is 21, you said, and your youngest is 12. How different of a parent are you now to your 12-year-old and your younger kids than you were to your older kids? What things have because obviously you've grown as a mom, as a person. What things have you learned along the way that you've just gone, okay, maybe this thing doesn't matter so much and this is more important, or, vice versa? How have you changed?
I could think of two things in particular. One is that now that I am parenting more the younger children than the older children. So the focus is more on the younger children, or only on them. And I was an oldest child. I am learning, again, the things that I was wrong about as a child and as a young adult, and how, it's like, oh, younger they're spoiled. They don't have the same rules and it's all unfair and they don't, it's fine because they don't turn out as well anyway.
Yeah. Oh,
they don't get the same levels of responsibility. And so now it's like, okay, well, here you go. Here's the youngest. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
My husband at one point told me, he said, one of the children does have to be the youngest. And it's like, okay, well, we have to be intentional. Like it is an actual younger, more tempting to let the younger child off of responsibilities than the older. Everything feels like a lot bigger deal with the older kids.
Yeah.
And then you realize like, oh, I made mountains out of molehills with my oldest. And I died on some hills that, like, it's good that I won the battle, but I didn't actually need to fight it in the first place.
Yeah.
And so you do things differently and you let up on things. Like 12 is often a particularly argumentative stage.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say with my oldest in particular, and then still with my second, I would say I took the bait of all the arguments. I was like, oh, you want to argue with me? That's fine. I'm up for it. We'll argue and I'm going to win. And we just would go. And so I realized then after that was over and the next set comes around, it's like, oh, we're just not actually even going to get into this. Like,
right. Not even going to waste my time.
Your bait.
Yeah.
And then now with my very youngest being 12 and she starts and it's like, I just laugh and I'm like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This doesn't actually matter.
Yes.
Drink water, go run, and come back later.
Yeah. It is so fun to have that big age gap, between your kids. And it's so interesting always to me when there's families who have multiple kids with a big age gap, to see the difference in their parenting styles from the oldest to the youngest and how much that can change. So we have just a couple minutes left. What is one last bit of advice that you would love to offer to our audience, whether it's about organization or, raising our kids, launching them into adulthood or both, whatever? What would you like to leave with our audience?
If any of these topics or issues make you feel stressed out, whether it's kids getting older and parenting issues, the state of the house, that feeling of being stressed out, particularly about the future and how things are going, is an indicator to stop and take a deep breath, brain dump, then pray over what you have brain dumped and talk about what you have brain dumped to your husband and get on the same page about the mission of your family, the big picture.
Yeah.
Why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you have to sort out that top level before the other things start falling into place.
Yeah.
But, the solutions online are usually the like checklists and the stuff, which is like a bottom up. Like those are the very tangential things that aren't going to ever bring you back to the point and purpose.
Yeah.
But it's the point and purpose of it all that centers us and makes us able to get perspective and keep going and come back to what matters and what's true and notice when we're off track and know how to recenter and go the right direction again.
Yeah, it reminds me, a couple months ago, we did an episode with Isaac Tolpin. It was back in January. And he talks about basically creating your family vision and knowing where your family is going. And he goes into pretty good detail about how to do that. So if you guys missed that episode, go back and listen. It's so good. But it's really just recalibrating. And it's something that we have to do constantly with our families. We're as parents and as people, we're not going to parent our 5-year-olds the way we're going to parent them when they're 15. It's just a completely different world. And so you have to have perspective. You have to have goals. You need to know where you're going. And ultimately, of course, we always need to come back to what does God want from our family? What does he want our family culture to look like? And how can we accomplish that? That's the most important thing. That's far more important than having the perfect, tidy, organized house. That's more important than always having a perfect meal on the table, or our kids launching into adulthood exactly as we want them to. The main purpose is that they love and follow Jesus. And so even when things don't work out exactly as we plan them to, or exactly what we think, because life happens, right? And life is messy, and life is busy, and life has interruptions and all sorts of things. If we're keeping our main focus on Jesus, that's where it needs to be. So Mystie, thank you so much for being with us again this week. It is always such a pleasure to chat with you. Tell our audience really quickly, we've got like 2 minutes left, where they can find you again, and then what, because you've got a ton of resources. We talked last week again about your book, Simplified Organization, Learn to Love What Must Be Done. You've got lots of other resources. Tell us really quickly what some of those are.
Yeah, my website is simplyconvivial.com, and I have 2 podcasts. Simply Convivial is like 10-minute pep talks, just attitude pep talks, get you back on track. They're great for folding a basket of laundry. And then Simplified Organization is like 15, 20-minute conversations with other moms. A lot of them are just moms from our community sharing their insights on what they're working on. So it's very casual, very fun to just get that sense of like, there are a lot of us out there working on these things. You're not alone.
Yeah.
Keep going. And I have Simplified Organization, the Convivial Homeschool, Gospel Encouragement for Keeping Your Sanity While Living and Learning Alongside Your Kids is my other book. And the podcasts are on anywhere you get your podcasts, and it's also all on YouTube as well.
All right, we'll put all those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us. It's always such a pleasure. And you guys, thank you so much for being with us these last couple of weeks. Thank you for just listening to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast, because if you were not on the other side of this mic, we would just be talking into the air and we would have no purpose in doing what we do. But we know that you're out there listening. We love hearing from you. If you ever want to send an email to us, you can do that by sending an email to podcast@schoolhouserocked.com. And you can find everything on our website, schoolhouserocked.com. We love you guys. Have a great week, and we will see you back here next week. Bye.
You're listening to the Biblical Family Network.
Hey, I'm Miki.
And I'm Will.
And we're the co-hosts of the Culture Proof podcast. We want to invite you to join us every week as we discuss what's happening in the world and then filter those happenings through a decidedly biblical lens.
There are many questions, especially when we see what's happening in our culture today, but the answers are found within the Word of God. So that's where we want to look.
Amen. When we resist those cultural trends that rival the truth,
we remain culture proof.
I want to tell you, this isn't your child. And this isn't just because your kid wants to be an animator, cartoon, comic book writer.
Right.
This is a universal 8th grade dilemma. Why do I have to learn history, science, and math if I'm going to be an animator? I mean, that is a valid question. We always take it as a challenge, like they're challenging me.
Yeah.
But they in a sense are, but they're also genuinely, they're trying to make the connections. Tell me why. Right. And we as the homeschool families get to give our kids the why. And that's what they don't in public school. It's just that do this. It has no connection to life. You're just going to do the worksheet and move on. And we get to make the connections to life, because without a connection to life, it's empty.